It's over 3 years, COVID got in the way. It's over 3 years since the university and Robin Wilson invited me to deliver the Harold Wilson Memorial Lecture. And I am truly delighted to be here at last. Now, many people might ask, why is a former Conservative Prime Minister making a speech in honour of a Labour predecessor? I would ask, why not? I faced 4 Labour leaders during the time I was in Downing Street: Neil Kinnock, John Smith, Margaret Beckett and Tony Blair. And although we had sharp differences on policy and rude exchanges in the carnival they call Prime Minister's questions, I had a civilised and good working relationship with each one of them. Whenever necessary, I shared private confidences that I felt the leader of the opposition should know. And the privacy of those conversations was always absolutely honoured, as it should be in politics. Now, such a cross-party relationship isn't just personal. It's important for the conduct of government. If politics degenerates to a clash of personalities and ideologies and has no common endeavour, then it is truly failing the public interest. Parliament has to be more than a forum for debate about policy. Without a moral element, it is a body without a heart. And unless policy is focused on the safety and well-being of the country, then it truly has no moral element. When Harold Wilson became Prime Minister, I was a mere 21-year-old, and he was about to dominate politics for over a decade. In that time, he won 4 general elections and lost only 1, a feat not achieved since Gladstone, and one, given the nature of modern politics, that may never be achieved again. He left Number 10 3 years before I entered Parliament. But when I did and we met, we saw one another most often at the news ticker tape in the Commons outside the smoking room, where we discussed how well or not Huddersfield Town Football Club was doing. And even when Harold's memory was impaired, he could still recite the names of past Huddersfield teams without any difficulty whatsoever. In order to respond in kind, I told him who was playing for Surrey on the first occasion I saw them play in 1952. Now, although 20 years before that, I had railed as a kid against the great opponent of my party, I found when I met him that I liked him. And I regretted the passion of those useful speeches against his government in the 60s. They had softened in my memory, and perhaps I had grown up politically as well. Much later, when I was myself Prime Minister, I was glad to be able to be of some small service to Harold and Mary. And when many years beyond that, Norma and I arrived for a holiday in the Scilly Isles, the phone rang, and it was Mary inviting us to come round immediately for tea. So for many reasons, I'm honoured to be here today. During any significant public life, the public mostly see politicians through the distorting lens of other people's views. Now, time gives a clearer and fairer perspective. And as I look back, I see a different Harold Wilson to the one I opposed as a boy, now some 60 years ago. As Prime Minister, Harold inherited a society that was becoming used to modest affluence, but which was about to face economic difficulties and the realities of a rapidly changing world. But he achieved a great deal. He made the Labour Party much more attractive, too attractive for we Tories. He made the Labour Party much more attractive to mainstream voters. He recognised a country that was becoming more liberal and acted to make it more egalitarian. His social policies, he and his colleagues, improved the life chances of women and minorities, liberalised abortion, reformed race relations, made divorce laws fairer, decriminalised homosexuality, and ended capital punishment. He sought greater social mobility, still sadly work in progress so many years on. And he was beaten back when he tried to modernise industrial relations. But with his concern for education, he set up the Open University, a transformative policy for many millions of people. And he held to a very brave policy at the time of keeping the United Kingdom out of the Vietnam. Now, he achieved all this against the cultural background of what we now call the swinging 60s. Wasn't swinging all the time, I can tell you I was there. And the bleak economic prospects following quadrupling of the price of oil in the 1970s. Today, with our own energy problems, we can appreciate the disruption and the chaos that that caused. And yet, for many, he remained an elusive political figure, with the true Harold Wilson often hidden behind the demands of party management. Throughout his premierships, he had to manage a turbulent political party with many talents, some of which had rather large egos. He also faced frequent economic challenges. Was he a radical or a traditionalist? A man of the left or a quasi-social democrat? No one was absolutely sure. I believe, have always believed, that those ambiguities were the pragmatism of a politician, clever and able enough to see both sides of every argument and understand that every point of view had a good reason behind it. But of one thing I am absolutely certain. Harold Wilson was a Democrat and a patriot who believed in representative democracy and respected the laws and conventions that were necessary for it to work. And for all that, and a great deal more besides, I'm extremely honoured to be here this evening. Now, I chose democracy as my subject because I fear for its future. As of this moment, when we meet tonight, only 1 in every 8 nations is a full democracy. And in some of those, there is a great deal of fraying at the edges. Democracy can be chaotic, as we see at home and overseas from time to time. But democracy matters. It's about freedom to live your life within the law. Some countries, some people have never enjoyed that. Others who have done so now have governments that are casting those freedoms aside. Even in our own and stable country, democracy is under stress and needs to be protected. We British, we take democracy for granted. We grew up with it. We expect it. It's nothing special, we think, to us. And that is why we take it for granted. But we shouldn't. A look around the world warns us that there is no room for complacency, not least here in the United Kingdom, to which I will come to later. Democracy is far more than simply having a universal right to vote. 30 years ago, we thought we glimpsed a more democratic world. The Soviet Union imploded. Germany reunited. Apartheid ended. Democracy spread across Eastern Europe. The liberal order was dominant. All seemed set fair. But it wasn't. We were naive. We forgot the human capacity for folly. To be truly free means more than simply to be at liberty. Democracy means freedom to speak as your conscience dictates, to act against justice or oppression and to be within the law when you do so, to worship without persecution, and to live in a society that is free of fear and, as far as possible, free of want as well. Such freedoms liberate lives, but are unknown to the vast majority of our world even today. Our own democracy in this country, our own democracy and freedoms were fought for over 1,000 years. The clergy is often, almost daily in fact, criticised for speaking publicly about political issues. They shouldn't be. As we look at our history, we should be grateful that they did. In the 11th century, Archbishop Anselm defied the autocracy of William Rufus. William FitzOsbert, known locally at the time as Longbeard, gave his life in defence of the poor. Another Archbishop, Stephen Langton, was the guiding hand behind the Magna Carta, which William the Marshal republished and enforced when it might have sunk into oblivion. Simon de Montfort, and much later Oliver Cromwell, moved power away from autocracy and towards parliamentary democracy. The Great Reform Act in the 1830s began to widen the franchise beyond the privileged minority. And Mrs. Pankhurst led the suffragettes in a long campaign to extend the vote to women. All of them, in their own way, and many others I haven't mentioned, are among the founders of modern British democracy. Over the centuries, when other countries had revolutions, our parliamentary system helped to ensure that we did not. Something so hardly won, over 1,000 years as our democracy, something so hardly won should be cherished. And yet today, in our general elections, 1/4 of those entitled to vote routinely choose not to do so. Many millions seem disengaged. One study recently found that 2/3 of younger voters would welcome a so-called, I quote, strong man leader. A straw in the wind, surely, but not to be ignored. Democracy depends upon the consent of the people. If consent is lost, democracy will surely fail. Nor is democracy in good shape if millions of people vote not with enthusiasm for their party, but for what they see as the least bad choice. I suspect that happens, I heard people, I suspect that happens more often than is comfortable, and should make victorious parties cautious about the power of their mandate. Today, right across our world, there is widespread discontent with government. Democracy is in retreat. Political and civil liberties have been falling year upon year for over a decade and a half and continue to do so. True democracy needs protection. To be secure and to spread more widely, democracy needs to prove its merits with rising living standards and stable government. But democracy is fragile. Without success, it can be overwhelmed, value by value, freedom by freedom, country by country. We know that. We know that because it has been happening for years. And that is dangerous, actually. When countries discard democracy, populism and autocracy are waiting in the wings to replace it. I want to say something about populism. It's got nothing to do with being popular, except in the short term and for the wrong reasons. We should be wary of populism and the easy promises it makes that can't be delivered. It thrives in times of hardship. It thrives by fueling divisions and discontent in order to earn support. It undermines the law. It attacks the elite for betraying the people. It condemns unfashionable views, and it bypasses legitimate authority. Populist leaders are more likely to be autocratic than democratic. They prefer obedience to ability. They appoint acolytes and sycophants to positions of power for which they are unsuited, appointed only because they will be supportive and unquestioning of the leader. Dissenters who warn or criticize are abused or crushed or removed from positions of influence. Populists have no tolerance for the middle ground. It is in the middle ground where most people in our nation sit and always have done. There are those who are strongly at the right wing and those who are strongly at the left wing, but the vast bulk of our nation sits at the middle tipping slightly, one side or another. But populists have no tolerance for them. To them, consensus is weak. They don't recognise boundaries that should never be crossed in a democracy. They promise to confront what they call threats. By that, they usually mean unpopular minority groups. They don't obey the conventions, those restraints of behaviour that keep politics democratic. But the better future they promise is rarely, if ever, delivered. Some of these attitudes can be seen even in democratic countries, and it is a corrupting influence. People who are disenchanted with the frustrations of democracy, and there are many, people who are frustrated should reflect upon countries with so-called strong leaders. In China, Russia, Brazil, Iran, among many, many others, people spend their life looking over their shoulder, careful of what they say, and forever wondering whether they have done or said the wrong thing. That is not living in a free and open society. Even in Europe, there are illiberal and autocratic political parties. In Poland and Hungary, governments have showcased the unsavoury essence of populism. Political power is hoarded at the top. One feature, consistent feature of populist behaviour is to demand loyalty to the leader. Think about that. Loyalty to the leader, not to their consciences, not to their electors, not to their country, not to their promises, and not to what is right rather than wrong, but just loyalty to the leader, whatever he or she may say. That cult of democracy, of personality, is not democracy and never will be. We should beware. Complacently, in our own country, we wring our hands and say how truly awful all this is. That is right, it is truly awful. But we should be careful. We in our country are not armour-clad against anti-democrats or the failings of populism. Have we forgotten Moses' black shirts in the hardship of the 1930s? Have we not realised that wokeism and cancel culture are no friends of freedom of speech? Are we comfortable when minorities are targeted purely because of their colour or their religion or for some other reason? Are we aware of the threat that some parts of social media can impose, particularly on our young and their views and their way of life? There are also blemishes in our own public life, although compared to many countries, our standards remain high. But that said, in order to keep those standards high, we should be more vigilant and not hesitate to call out actions that undermine the high standards we expect in our public life. Our Parliament traditionally has been seen as an example, but less so now. I believe that its recent democratic misbehaviour was careless and chaotic rather than malign, but it cannot be ignored. Parliamentary conventions and the law have been broken. The Cabinet attempted to prorogue Parliament and were found unanimously to have behaved illegally by the Supreme Court. Ministers threatened to renege unilaterally on the treaty they themselves freely agreed, the Northern Ireland Protocol, an action that many believe will be shown to be illegal if it goes to law. Ministers tried to change parliamentary rules to protect a colleague who had misbehaved. Parliament intervened and they failed. The government undermined the Bank of England and ignored the Office of Budget Responsibility. We have seen how that ended, and we will have to live with it. Hopefully that lesson has been learned. Reports suggest that some members of Parliament wish to close down the Select Committee inquiry into whether a previous Prime Minister misled the Commons. They should fail, and the inquiry should go ahead. All these actions were unprecedented and did damage. There is one other action that I hope will not be repeated. In the debates on Brexit, the government took the whip away to end the parliamentary career of 21 Conservative members of Parliament who voted to remain in the European Union. The lame case for this draconian action was that the deselected members of Parliament were defying, I quote, the will of the people, a maxim familiar to authoritarians from the dawn of political time. Its effect, when they left Parliament, was to remove from Parliament, our Parliament, able and thoughtful members who were following their conscience and acting in what they judged to be the interests of their constituents. Both the Conservative Party and the Parliament were the losers from this action. But there is a wider point. If expulsion from national politics is how any government with a temporary majority imposes discipline in the mother of parliaments, then it may be time to look afresh at how our democracy is working. If we seek to remove from Parliament honest and deeply held views because they are inconvenient to any government, then we infringe the very principles of representative democracy and are on the way to being no better than China. The interests of our country should be better served than that. When is our democracy most vulnerable? I believe it is when it is intolerant, when it fails to deliver rising living standards, when it is seen to be unfair, if it ignores the morality of the decisions it takes, if it is believed to be corruptible, if it is irretrievably divided. We now have a new Prime Minister who faces a Herculean task. There are warning signs the government cannot ignore at a time when COVID and the energy crisis have spent our money, and the recent so-called mini-budget has upset the financial market, undermined confidence, and curbed our capacity to borrow for some time. It is a truly wretched intro, and the Prime Minister will have to carefully select his priorities. And he will have to select them at a time when there are many priorities, many and varied priorities to be dealt with. Over many years in our country, not just this government or the previous government or the one before that, over many years, inequality in our society has widened. Incomes for the last 15 years have fallen in value, and there is discontent over the division of the national cake. That isn't unique to our country, but that is no consolation to those in our country who have fallen behind. Pain overseas does not limit or ease the pain of those in difficulty at home. I believe a consensus now exists across public and political opinion, all parties, that the grossest inequities in our society must be brought to an end. They have often been masked in the past, but have been brought into full view as the cost of living, interest rates, and mortgages all rise. Some of our very worst problems were not made here at home in the United Kingdom. Others that were have built up over quite a long time. But it cannot be acceptable that so many people are turning to food banks to feed their families and that others are homeless, some sleeping on our streets. The indignity and the hardship is a daily affront to our democracy. So too are the regional disparities in income and opportunity, the National Health Service queues and the housing shortages. These social injustices, well, that is what they are. Our wider policy of levelling up is so compelling, it is important to secure what you might truthfully call the sheer decencies of our way of life. Who could be against something so patently fair? Very few, I believe. But there is no quick and easy solution. And ministers will have to make clear some uncomfortable realities. Levelling up is a big job. It will be vastly expensive and long-term. It isn't going to happen in a week or a month or a year or a parliament. And it will be made longer than it otherwise would have been, because our national finances have been ransacked by the cost of COVID, by the energy crisis, and yes, although many may dislike my saying this, by Brexit too, which has not so far even begun to deliver the promises that were made for. The plain, unvarnished truth is this: we cannot have our cake and eat it, especially when the cake is smaller than it should be. I believe levelling up is the right long-term policy for social clemency in our society. And I believe it'll work. While the concept of trickle down from the rich to the poor will make no more than a minor improvement within any reasonable time scale. That great conservative who brought me certainly into the conservative fold when I was very young, Ian McLaren, once said, and I quote, "We not only cope, we care." And that should be the watchword of every political party. It can be done. It must be done. And given how national shortcomings have been exposed, now must surely be the moment. Vision is needed, and empathy, and compassion, and competence, nothing less, will achieve what we wish to achieve. Policymakers of all parties must reject short-termism, false optimism, denials of reality, deceit, bluster, knee-jerk reactions, madcap ideology, or misdirection, all of which are no more than shabby tricks to hide the realities that face us. These weapons of populism end up hurting people and not helping. The leadership that we need will not play back what people wish to hear, but will speak the truth to the nation and try to bring the country together during these times of uncertainty and hardship. And if not now, when can this happen? We British have always grumbled about our governments and our politicians. It has been a national pastime from the dawn of time. But most of us would prefer in our heart to be proud of our country. And we see that instinct in a very prosaic way when our national sports teams take on the world. At football, cricket, athletics, any sport you care to name, we wish to see our team play well and win. And when they do, we cheer them on and are ourselves cheered up by their success. Harold Wilson and Huddersfield Town is an absolute case in point. And we need our economy to win too, for that will cheer up our living standards as well as respect around the world for our country. So let me turn to Britain in the world and where we stand, because nostalgia and national pride can and does deliver a false impression. 120 years ago, we were a mighty power in a world of 2 billion people. This month or next, that 2 billion will become 8 billion people, a quadrupling of the world population in a little over 100 years. It is hard to grasp that figure. Billions, what on earth are they? 8 billion is 8,000 million people in our world, of whom only 70 million are Britons. Our population is dwarfed by growth of population in the rest of the world. We remain in the upper echelon of national wealth per person, but produce collectively only just over 3% of the goods and services that are produced around the world. Our developed economy, our skills, our history mean we remain an influential power. But do not deceive yourselves. We are no longer a great power. There are three great powers: America, China, and the European Union, and we are not among them. I don't say this to disparage our country, but to put it in context. We are an upper middle-ranking power that benefits from working with like-minded nations to meet the challenges that lie ahead. If we choose not to do that, we will be weaker, more vulnerable, and less well off. To be successful, we must look to the future, not a rose-tinted past, and let realism and not delusion govern our policy. We need partners to maintain peace and security, to address climate change, to ensure energy sources, to maintain global trade. No nation state, not even the power of the United States or China, is able to do that on their own. For decades, we flattered ourselves that we punched above our weight. And that was true. We did punch above our weight. But then, we were fortunate to be a close partner to two of the three great power blocs in the world, the United States and the European Union. That has now changed. We are no longer so cosily placed because America is turning more to the east, and we have chosen to leave the European Union. These decisions have reduced our importance to America and Europe. They remain powerful allies and partners, but their relationship with us is no longer as relevant to them as once it was, and no longer as valuable to us as once it was. Every government service to its nation depends upon its economic well-being. Money is the root of nearly all progress. It is economic success that raises the taxes that pay for our vital services, from health to education to defence, as well as building our hospitals and our roads. When I was a boy, Bob Dylan sang a famous line, "The times they are changing." So they are, as harsh reality imposes itself on our politics. A string of opinion polls now suggests that the Labour Party is the favourite to form the next government. The election, if the polls are correct, is theirs to lose. This changes politics. The Conservatives, of course, must reach out to every corner of our nation and try to re-earn the trust that has been squandered and lost over recent years. But for Labour too, life has changed. They can no longer rest on generalities, on comforting slogans, or on the unpopularity of the sitting government. As a government in waiting, the Labour Party must now provide answers that make sense, and some of those answers will be unpopular to many voters, including natural voters of their own. So politics has now entered a new phase. However, if the gravity of current events puts an end to fantasy promises and the mindless sloganizing that accompanies it, then I welcome that. If it ends ideological obsessions and puts zealotry in its place, then so much the better. Our politics as a whole will benefit from that. And we should never forget, never, how much our nation as a whole would benefit from the sheer friendliness and basic humanity of political relationships. So let me, in conclusion, just illustrate that. After the 1979 election, a new member was finding his way around the corridors when he looked up, and there, right in front of him, was Harold Wilson. They talked. Harold learned from their brief discussion that he was a new MP for a northern industrial seat. "Come and have a drink," said Harold, taking him by the arm and into the smoking room where they sat down. And as they settled, Harold turned to his guest and said, "I'm having a whiskey. What will you have?" And the rather nervous new member confronted by this 4 times Prime Minister said, "A whiskey please, Sir Harold. But there is something I should tell you. I'm a Conservative." The Conservative explained Harold, "Good gracious, in which case, make that a double." In politics, as in life, humanity and friendliness matters. It did then, it does now, and my goodness, don't we need it. Thank you very much.